Nyono שיגיע אודום ויסקשה בבוירה יסבור שמי ויסדבק בו דבקוס ממש. The Indian of Nevius is the ability to be dovok in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That was the Lashon we brought last week, that the Lashon Novi is from the Lashon of being hollow, emptying yourself out and allowing yourself to be able to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boifin sheyagish ha'izdabkos. He be able to feel the connection, the yasig mashu mizdabek boy. And he'll be able to perceive that which he's dovok in. Dahainu kvoide is baruch. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean that he's being masig HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Later on, he's going to explain to us exactly what he means by these words. That he's masig kvoide. Al der shenavoil lefonim. V'yeh adover boru etzloi umurgesh menu b'li sofek klal. Keder shlo yistapek b'dover gashmi shiagijeu b'chushov. Here he's saying, I mean, you might have thought, and we'll see later, that the Ramchal goes to enormous lengths to explain to us how this hasoga, which is completely beyond the hasoga of mankind, it's completely beyond the realms of the physical world. How does it get converted? How does our body and our mind access this sort of hasoga? And really, you'll see the Rambam and all the Rishonim have a really serious issue with this, because however much, it starts off, and you'll see the Rambam. Let me show you the Rambam, because the Rambam is the first one who here we are. Here we have the Rambam, yeah? Now look where the Rambam. So look where the Rambam describes what is Nevuah. She says like this.
Yes.
Do you see it? You see it?
Yes.
הנביאים מיילוס הן. כמו שיש בחוכמה חוכם גודל מחברי, כך בנבואה נובי גודל מנובי. You have different daggers of Nevius. וכולם, now listen to this, ein royin mare hanavua, elo bechaloim bechezyon lailo. The only way, and we'll see the other Rishonim maybe change this a bit, but the Rambam says the only way that a Novi can receive the information of the Nevuah is only in a chaloim, in a chezyon lailo, slumber of the night, I don't know. Oy beyoim acher, oy beyoim, you can see it in the daytime, acher shetipil alem tardemo, after he falls into a form of slumber. K'mo shenema, b'marei lo visvado, b'chaloim edababoy. So the pasuk actually talks about a mara or a chaloim. V'chulam, now look at this, k'shemisnabim, when they are receiving the nevuah, Ivreim mizdazin, their body goes into some sort of, we'd call it today, into extreme shock. And when you get into shock, the body shakes into extreme shock. V'koyach haguf koshel, and his bodily functions stop. Veshtenoiseim mistalfois, I don't know exactly what that means. It's another form of disconnecting from bodily actions. V'tishoel hadas pnuyo, and the das will remain free. Free is the wonderful word to use here. V'tishoel hadas pnuyo lohovin ma'ashetire, to understand what she sees. Yes. I want you to see something here. It's not that the das, it's the das. The das is seeing. V'tishoy hadas pnuyo lehovin mashetire. She, the das, sees, and the das understands what she's seeing. K'mo shenema b'Avrom, by the Brisbane Absorim, v'ine eimo chasheicho gedoylo nefeles olov. Says the Rambam, so the Rambam learns that this eimo chasheicho gedoylo nefeles olov, this tardemo, is the necessary switching off of bodily functions. which is needed in order to be masig nevuah. So, as you can well see, the Rambam and all the Rishonim will see later on, it's wonderful to see the slight nuances, the differences, teeny differences, which have an enormous, the Teitzah is enormous. But the basic approach of all the Rishonim was, and the Kadmonim, the body cannot comprehend, be masig, hasoga of nevuah, because hasoga nevuah is a purely spiritual experience, and it actually negates the body. Befrat, by the way, Lashitas Harambam, that the Rambam always holds that this world has a disconnect from the spiritual world. Don't forget, we're talking about the same Rambam who learned that it was Malachim. When the Malachim came to Avram, it was in the Chaloim. No Malach can walk on this earth. A spiritual being cannot exist on this earth because there's a disconnect between this world and the world above. And therefore the Rambam for sure, but you see it's all the Rishonim, but the Rambam for sure has to come onto this, that in order to have a hasoga of nevuah, there has to be a total disconnect from the body. And therefore the body is shaking, the body goes into shock. There has to be some sort of slumber, which is what happened by Avraham Avinu. That was the Tardaim of Avraham Avinu. Now, and therefore, when we talk about das, when the Rambam's talking about das, he's not talking about intellect. Even though many times the Rambam talks about intellect, and in the Rambam, the intellect is a very high thing. But when we're talking about hasogas hanevuah, it's not intellect. It's what's called the seichel hanivdol. It's the higher form of comprehension. It's the higher form of das. It's the das which is Odom Yoda Eschavo. That's right, the conception higher. It's the Odom Yoda Eschavo. Das from the word of connection. Das is the form of hasoga which there is, which is the connection between man and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember that's what we spoke about last week, this phone a few weeks ago. Elohim, the word B'Tselem Elohim. Elohim is that Seichel HaNivdol. So the Rambam's talking about das in the higher form of das. He's not talking about intellect. It's nothing which you get in Oxford and Cambridge. Now the problem is one thing. Okay, great. So it was the kli which was makabalit was this das elyon. Okay, but now the novi has to now understand it. I'm talking about the way me and you understand it. He's got to be lahovin. So how does it literally, this hasogas hanavua has to go from a higher to lower form of das. It's literally going down to another form. And this will see all the Mefarshim it's a very tricky issue for them. Okay, so how does it come down to the human physical comprehension if it's really negated the physical body? In as much as the body can't comprehend it, that's why the body is mizdazea and the body goes into shock and into sleep. So how does the mind get it afterwards? So there is some form of transformation. The hasoga has to go through a transformation. And we'll see all the Rishonim talk about it. Now you understand what the Rambam, now go back to the Ramchal. At the end of Ois Dalet, V'yeh, now look what he says. V'yeh hadovo borur etzloi. That means the knowledge of the Nevuah will be clear to the Novi, umurgesh mimenu. It will be literally something which he can touch. Verstehst, you say, verstehst. Versteht. It's something, beli sofek klal. There's a clarity in the Nevuah. כדרך שלא יסתפק בדבר גשמי שיגישהו בחושיו. In the same way that something which man can touch, he can comprehend, so also this would be clear. Now that's a chiddush. Why is the Ramchal being madgish it? Because even though it's not the same das which was received from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it went through a transformation process. And one might think if it gets transformed, so it's like cliche. It's like you're hearing it, you're not hearing exactly what you got. That was Aspaklario Meiro, was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was Aspaklario Meiro. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Chaim Volozhin in one of his droshes says that the Ovis, even the Ovis never was able to Aspaklario Meiro. Aspaklario Meiro means clear vision. That means, what that means, clear vision means like this. Pe al pe, Menachem, pe al pe medaber. That means like this. Aspaklario Meiro means it didn't there was no transformation process. A human being can't be masig nevuah. He has to fall asleep to get this nevuah. But when the nevuah goes through a transformation and he's getting it, not the normal navi, not in its pure form. He's getting, let's call it in a secondary form, in a form which has gone through some sort of filter. That's called aspaklario she'eino meiro. In the same way that his body cannot process nevuah and has to go into a slumber, goes through shock and starts shaking, so also the knowledge cannot be perceived in its original form. It goes through a filter, which is called aspaklario she'eino meiro. But that doesn't mean, now here that's what the Ramchal says. 1 minute, but Moshe Rabbeinu was two things. First of all, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Chaim Volozhin, he brings it from the Psukim, and the Ramchal will talk about it later. First of all, he never needed to fall asleep. He didn't get nevuah in a chaloim. Ki pe al pe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu talked to him mouth to mouth. There was no need for him to shrug off the human body to be able to process nevuah. And the same way, for the same reason, the das which he got wasn't a das that went through some sort of transformation process. He got the original, aspaklario meiro. Says Reb Chaim Volozhin, he says, if I'm not mistaken, by the obvious it says, "V'anachnu offer." What's the lashon by the obvious? Who said "V'anachnu mo"? "V'anachnu mo" was by the obvious says "V'anachnu mo." By Moshe Rabbeinu says he's offer veifa. Says, am I right or have I got the wrong way around? Let me see, maybe I've got it here.
Wrong way around.
I've got the wrong way around. Yes, I got the wrong way around. Here we are.
Avraham was anachnu off of Eifer.
Oh, that's it. Avraham was anachnu off of Eifer, and Moshe was of anachnu mo. So he says, Avraham was off of Eifer. He says, but off of Eifer is epis. Off of Eifer is a very lowly form of Metzias. Obis is epis. It's not nothing. And therefore there was a mechitza mavdeles. The body was something, and it was mavdel between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and him. And therefore there had to be taldemo by Avraham Avinu. When he was masik the nevuah of the bris, there was taldemo. And the same reason, it was not an nevius of aspaklario meiro. Mashein Kain, he says Moshe Rabbeinu, which says mo. Yeah, correct? Mo, which means ich bin garnished. When there's a garnish, says Reb Chaim Volozhin, he was managed to shrug away his physicality completely until there was no mechitza mavdeles, and therefore he didn't have to be His nevius wasn't b'chaloim. And therefore, for the same reason, his nevius was as paklari meiro. But now you understand the chiddush which the Ramchal says now. One might think Moshe Rabbeinu, where the nevius didn't have to go through a filter. He got it in its pure form. There was a behirus. There was a clarity to the nevuah. There was a clarity. He got it in its pure crystallized form. Masha'en came, the other Nevi'im, where they were Abbas Bakario She'eino Miro, and it wasn't, their bodily functions had to be completely broken down. And the idea had to come through a filter. One might think that it didn't, their perception of it was not with a behirus. Says Ramchal, no. It's like, later on the Ramchal says, it's like when you look through glasses. When you look through the glasses, you're seeing the same thing. I'm not seeing something different. It wasn't foggy. Aspaklali Yoshein doesn't mean it was foggy. It means it had to go through glasses. The Ramchal says it's like a magdelet zchuchit, a magnifying glass. You're looking through the magnifying glass, and only through the magnifying glass can you see it, but you see it clearly. That's what the Ramchal's chiddush is. You read through the language, you don't know what he's getting at. The chiddush he's saying, though, even though it's not as paklari meira, even though the physical form cannot perceive the original nevuah, nevertheless his perception through his mind, his human mind, will be with total clarity. V'hinei, Iker hanevuah hu, says the Ramchal, hasig hadveikus v'akesha hazeh, oidei b'chaim. The Iker nevuah is being masig this dveikus and kesha, oid b'chaim, even when the man is still alive. Shezeh shleimus godel vadai. That means nevius is, what is nevius? Nevius is, like we spoke last week, the outcome of nevius is the prophetic vision. What is the cheftza of nevius? The cheftza of nevius is the hasoga of shleimus and the kesha and dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's like if you look at the beginning of Eitz Chaim, so the Eitz Chaim says that the purpose of the whole Bria was in order for a person to be able to be dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. L'dovka boy. The highest form of dveikus is the novi. What comes out of that dveikus? That's the prophetic vision. But says the Ramchal, Iker hanevuah hu. The cheftza of the nevius is hasig hadveikus v'kesha hazeh, oid b'chaim. Being able to be masig this kesha and dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you're alive. Shezeh shleimus godel vadai. V'ulam. Now look the way he writes it. It's so beautiful. I mean, without last week, the beauty of this of the Ramchal is that most people don't read it. That means they're so busy just reading it like with niggin, like Mesilas Yesharim, that they don't even learn it properly, and they miss out on the most phenomenal chidushim which the Ramchal puts in just by diktu kaloshen. Look what he says here. Ikar nevius is hasig adveikus hakesha hazeh, getting this veikus. Shezeh shleimus vadai. Ve'ulam. It's like, what is the novi? What's nevius? The kesher, the dveikus. Ve'ulam yislavel lezeh. Listen what it says. There's a side issue. There's something that comes with it. Something which is nilva. Something which is tofel. Something which is a side effect of nevius. What's the side effect of nevius? He will get knowledge. He will get this prophetic vision and prophetic understanding. That means the yidiyah, the hasoga, the vision which the Navi is getting, that's just a teitzor. That's not the chefetz of the Nevius. The chefetz of the Nevius is the shleimus, the kesher, the dveikus. Ki omnom yasig al dezein yonim amitim v'nichbodim b'oid. He's going to, the minute he's dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he will be masig things which are amitim and nichbodim. I don't know how to translate it in English. You understand what it is, yeah? Misisrei soidoisav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu ve'yasigem bebiru, and he will be masig them with a clarity. B'derech ha'askole ha'nishpat shezacharnu, through this das elyon, this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this das elyon, this hasoga gevoya. Ubeyoyse koyach mi bali ruach hakodesh, u'k'mosh nevo b'siyata d'shmaya. Ruach hakodesh is also a dveikus. It's also, so literally, I mean, what it is this. It's the dveikus elevates me beyond my physical confinement. And the shackles of physicality break off through my dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the minute I'm elevated through that and I'm dovuk in HaKadosh Baruch Hu kavyochel, so automatically my hasogas are far beyond physical perception. That's what's happening. That is the Metzius of Nevius. Okay. Ach, derech hasoga zois. Now he's coming on to what we spoke about. So, how does this hasoga start? Let's call it, I'm going to give you the best way of describing it is, the first Nevius we find in the Torah, one of the first Nevius we find in the Torah, which is actually described, is Yankiv Avinu. The Sulam Mutzavarta. The Sulam Mutzavarta. His Nevius was a Nevius of a Sulam Mutzavarta. Correct? Sulam Mutzavarta.
That was a dream.
So that, I don't know if that was a dream. By the way, the Sfas Emes there asks, why is it the first time that's mentioned that Nevius was done whilst he was sleeping was by Yankiv Avinu? There's been beforehand all sorts of Nevius. Yitzchok spoke, Avram spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, besides the Tademo. But the Tademo wasn't called a dream. The Sfas Emes asks it. So if I'm not mistaken, the Sfas Emes says, this symbolized the Golus. He went out to Golus. When you're in Golus, you can't get it. There's no, you can't receive Nevius in this perfect form. It has to come through a Chaloim.
Okay.
But there you see there's a Madrega. There's a Sulam Mutzavarta. The Sulam represents Madregas. The Sulam represents Madregas from here up to Shamayim. Those Madregas are the same. That's right, the Sulam Magia Shamayim, but that's the same Madregas. Every Hasoga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to go through levels. In the same way that any Ruchnius goes through, Ramchal calls it the side of Hadroga. Anything spiritual, everything starts up on top and it comes down to the bottom. He says the reason why there are so many worlds, the Shayar Lomos, the reason why there are so many worlds, says Ramchal, is because we need so many steps, so many filters for the Kedusha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come down. Each step is like a filter. So also the Hasoga of Nevius has to go through steps. Any Ruchnius to come down here has to have that Sulam, which is Magyar, Sulam Mutzavarta. That Sulam, that Madregas, any form of Ruchnius which comes down here has to go through what's called in the Ramchal in Ulis form Hadroga. Hadroga means going down level after level after level after level after level. Look at it as filters. You have the sun, the light of the sun. In order for me to be able to look there, I have to have lots of filters for that light to come down. That's the moshel. Always the shemesh is the moshel for elokus. That's why That's the Ein Sof, the Oyer Ein Sof. When you talk about Kodesh Baruch Hu, you talk about it Oyer Ein Sof, because the best moshel we have is light. So just like the sun's light is too bright, and for us to be able to in any way look at it, it has to come through loads of filters. So also the sulam, any ruchnius coming down, it has to come through the same thing. So also the nevius has to go through hadroga. Derech hasogazos, says the Ramchal, oisei. Derech hasogazos, the way in which this knowledge is perceived by the novi, hishetia alidei emtsoim. It has to come through mediums. There has to be a medium. This is the way I described to you beforehand. Shelo yizdabek ha'odam v'lo yaseg es kvodo yizborach shemoy k'mo shereis chaver lefonov. Don't think he'll be able to see. Now, this re'ir we're talking about is with the best way in English we say it, the mind's eye. We're not talking about a re'ir, a physical re'ir, because actually he's knocked out. He's in the middle of a tardema. Yeah, he can't see nothing. So we're talking about the mind seeing, the mind's eye. He says, don't think that the mind's eye can connect to Kodesh Baruch Hu in the same way that I look at somebody else. There's no such thing. Elo al yedei meshosim. There will have to be a medium here. Yeshamshu lahasoga shimush haschuchis la'ayin. Shal yodam yusach covered. Here's the example he gives. These meshosim, these mediums, will be like the glass which you use in your glass in your glasses to see something else. It doesn't change what you see. I'm seeing the same thing, but I'm seeing it through a glass. So also these mediums are the only way which you can be masig HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Achamusog, again. Now look at it again. So, you're going to tell me if so, it's going through a medium. If so, it's like a filtered form. It's hazy. It's not clear. I always thought aspaklario hameiro vaspaklario she'eino meiro means that Moshe Rabbeinu saw it clearly and all the others didn't see it clearly. So it's chas v'sholem. That's not what it means. Achamusog, that which he sees, that which he perceives through this medium, be'emes, one second. Achamusog be'emes yakovid v'loyache. What he's getting, what he's perceiving is kvoido yizbarach. He's not seeing something else. And it's not that you're seeing a shliach. I'm seeing kvoido yizbarach, but I'm seeing it through a pair of glasses. That means like this. This is now here already we have to understand there are madregas. That means, let me explain to you here's a very, very important nakuda. People are mistaken. People think that the madregas of Nevius were that this guy saw it clearly, this guy saw it more foggy, this guy saw it more foggy, this guy saw it more foggy. So the more you get lower and lower on the Nevi'im, so verzokt, who says you can what's it called? Who says you can rely on them? Their vision was not as paklari or meiro. I actually saw it written in an article written by a professor. Yeah, an article written by a professor. And he writes there, Bikoret HaMikra. So he's got Bikoret on the Nevi'im also. He says, listen, there were Nevi'im who you can see Yechezkel had a vision in the Merkova. Said Yirmiyahu, but later on it was much more hazy and phasy, and they could be mistaken. That's besides being kfir, it's ignorant. What's ignorance? Ignorance is this. What they saw They saw clearly. The best way to look at it is like this. We see what our eyes see. I look at you and I see 4 people in front of me or 3 people in front of me on a Zoom. I see whatever. I've got channeled vision. My vision is channeled to what I'm looking in front of me. Now look at what happens when you're up in an airplane and you look down and you see the whole picture in front of you. So what I'm seeing is much more. You can actually see less or see more. You can actually see more details or less details. You can actually see the larger picture or the smaller picture. I can see the basic details, or I can see the most intrinsic details which are in the picture. Correct? That means that was the madrigas of the Nevi'im. There was a Navi whose glasses enabled him to have a bird's eye view. And not just a bird's eye view on the whole world, but also a detailed view of every single thing that's happening. So he saw much more, a much greater scope of vision. The other Nevi'im, they saw less. Not that they saw unclear, because there's no such thing as a vision which is not clear. It's always behirus, because it's always the das. It's not the human. It's always the das elyon which is coming to me through glass, but it's coming to me. So the madrigas of the Nevi'im were through what was the number of the glass they looked through. That's it. What was the number? And the number didn't define clarity. It defined scope, depth, and detail. The aspaklario was that which enabled them to see the nevius. Each aspaklario was different lefi what they were. On a lower level, he could get only a very basic understanding with a very channeled vision. You know, they used to come to the Novi, the Goin, I think I brought you once the Goin. The Goin in Mishlei says that the Novi was called a Roye. Roye. Why says the Novi, why was it called a Roye? He said because in days of old when the Nevi'us was still going, he said, one of the major jobs of the Nevi'im was that a guy wanted to know what was his tafkid in life. We spent all our life, you know, hoping that we found it, you know what I mean? And never knowing really, and just carrying on blindly and davening for siyata d'shmaya. But once upon a time, there was an ability to go and ask the Novi. And the Novi was roya. He saw what was in your heart. That's the way the Goin, it's Pirush HaGoin on the Mishli. He was roya, he saw into your heart what was your tafkid in this world. Now that was also Nevi'us, by the way. That's a Nevi'us. That was a prophetic vision. But it was very limited. That means you had to go to a Novi for it. It had to be a Novi. But it was very limited to the one person in front of you who's coming to ask his shaila, that you could tell him what his tafkid was. That form of Nevi'us was much easier than the one which Yecheskel had, or the ones that Yirmiyahu had, where they were talking about the future of Klal Yisrael. But what he saw, the Navi, that limited vision, when he was looking at the person in front of him, he saw just as clearly as Yirmiyahu, Yecheskel saw. The scope of the Nevi'us was different. So that's why the Ramchal is madgish all the time. Behirus was always there. There was no such thing. It's not a svara. We say verstehst the svara. It wasn't something that you had to. The kopet gedaf verstehen. The das elyon perceived it. It was transmitted to the seichel. So what was transmitted was boru. Each one's transmission was different. The scope of the vision, the detail of the vision was different. That's what he says here. Ach hamusog, that which they are perceiving, be'emes yeh hakovid v'lo yache. Each of them is perceiving hakodesh kvoido yizborach. Ela shetishtana hasoga kifi shinui emtzorim. Ki re'io baspaklario. V'yibochem b'ze madreges. Horichuk v'akiruf. Ubehirus haspaklario v'achiruso. V'hine. Bigoloise, we're up to now Vov. Ois Vov 105. Let's just read this paragraph. Vine bigoloiso yizborach shmoi ubi shofa shifo el hanovi. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself, Kavyochel, to the Novi, and his mashpia his shefa on him, yigba olav tigboires godel. He will feel, I think the best way of translating this, I don't know, I mean, Jeff, you said you have a translation there. I think the best way I would translate it, what's Yigba Olav Tigboires Godel? He feels an enormous amount of pressure. He feels, not pressure. He feels overcome. How do you translate it by
Overwhelmed.
you? Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Okay, each of them is all right. Umiyod.
Yeah.
Chomroi v'cholei v'rei gufa yizdazu. Here the Ramchal quotes the Rambam. His body shakes. He goes into shock. V'yechashvoi lishapech. And he feels as if what? He's completely, what's the translation?
Turned inside out.
Yeah, but how does he translate it? Is that how he translates
inside
it?
out.
Very well.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
excellent. And he feels, he feels like he's turning inside out. Because that is from the rules of the physicality of the human world. Not to be able to survive, to accept
Tolerate.
the gilui of the ruchnius. Kol shekain. That's when we're talking about ruchnius. Kol shekain gilui kvoido yizborach. Here we're talking about dveikus boy. He is ki'ilu being mizdabek in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hinei hargoshoisov yivotlu. His senses become null and void. V'gam pu'uloisov hanafshis lo yiflu kol ma'atzmon. He suddenly can't move his body. He's lost control on his physical. Gam pu'uloisov hanafshis lo yiflu kol ma'atzmon. He cannot control his, how do you translate it by you, Jeff?
Faculties. Mental faculty.
Faculties, okay.
Mental.
Yes,
Oh.
I don't know if that's what it means. All right, let's see. Avol tisho'alno kulam tluyois bois borach shmoi ubeshifoi anishpo. Everything is now ki'ilu, goes out of his control and put it HaKadosh Baruch Hu's control. Note, he doesn't say here that he goes into a dream. For some, he's brought the whole Rambam, but the dream is not, even though he's going to talk about it afterwards, it's when he defines Nevius, there's no mention of slumber and dream. The Rambam, when he let's go back to the Rambam. I can show you the Rambam again. Let's go back to the Rambam. The Rambam's Lashon was. So one second. Share. Yes. Let's go to the Lashon Rambam again. Hanavim chulon ein roin mare nevuah ela b'chaloim b'chezon laila. When he first talks about his first mention of Nevuah, he says it has to be either at night asleep or daytime under Tardemo. So even though the Ramchal quotes almost word for word the Lashon of the Rambam, but he doesn't start off with the introduction, only through sleep or a complete giving up of his physical capabilities. He doesn't say it. It's not mentioned. Later on, we'll see why. Let's just carry on. If we can carry on just 2 more minutes. V'hinei.
Yeah.
No, you know what? We'll carry this on next time. We'll carry those next time. We'll see all the time that the Ramchal almost goes with the Rambam, but not quite to the end. And if you remember why, this is what we've got to look out for. According to the Rambam, 2 things cannot coexist together. Elokus and this world cannot coexist. Malachim can't walk on this world. It has to be in a dream. Beis Hamikdash Shlishi will never come down to this world. Will never come down to this world, because you cannot have a spiritual entity existing in this world. According to the Ramchal and the Mekubalim, we are spiritual. We're just human form of spirituality. According to Ramchal, we actually are Ikka existence, he says always, is up there. We are just now some sort of shadow world. A shadow world. What actually is going on up there, not down here. So according to the Ramchal, there's no reason why Ruchnius, Elokus, shouldn't exist in this world. So also Nevius. According to the Rambam, there's a very, very, very precise Nevius is something which really negates totally the hashkafa of the Rambam of the chiluk between Ruchnius and Gashmius. According to Ramchal, it could coexist. It's going to have problems. Listen to me, the guf to be dovuk in, remember what he says here. It's not just being dovuk in Ruchnius. You're being dovuk with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look at the Lashon which we talked about till now. Look what it says here. It says, Kizeh michoik hachoyim, he just said. Shloi lisbo gilu Ruchnius. Ruchnius has difficulties, the body accessing Ruchnius. Kolshken gilui kvoidoi. This is not just a spiritual, what how to say in English? A spiritual hasoga ruchani. This is hasoga eloki. Nevius is dveikus im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's hasoga of kvoido yizborach. It's not just a hasoga of something ruchani. It's hasoga of kvoido yizborach. Says the Ramchal, bodies have serious problems with that. But now we have to note the reaction of the body could be different. According to the Rambam, you got to wipe out the body completely. Mm-hmm. According to the Ramchal, it's enough to put it into a comatose state. Is that the way in English is it? Is that the correct? Like a coma state. But coma state's enough. I don't have to have more than that. According to the Rambam, you might have to have more. We're going to see all the way through, we're going to compare the Rambam's Lashon with the Ramchal's Lashon to see exactly the fine distinction, because they both hold that there's a conflict. They both hold there's a war between your body and that soga which you're going to be masik. But the pshora between the body and that soga, that will be the difference between the Ramchal and the Rambam. Okay, Mitzvah Shem till next week. Who knows? Who knows? By next week, Mashiach will come. By next week, we'll be able to go out and Mashiach will come without a mask. Can you imagine such a thing? Without a mask, Mitzvah Shem. And they'll be dancing in the streets. Besimcha b'tuv levov. Kol tuv, erev tov. Good night, everybody. Kol tuv.
Thank you.